It is the 30th of the 7th, 2025, meaning one thing. There are very many F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. We'll talk about Lewis, who's been talking about relationships. We'll talk about his new engineer and his record at the Hungaroring. Not too shoddy from the 7-time GOAT, the one that they call Sir Lewis Carl Davidson. So too, we'll talk about Audi title sponsorship. We'll talk about a renewed sense of empathy with drivers who were struggling, mentioning no names Sonoda-san and Kimi Antonelli. So too, we'll talk about Nico Rosberg, who went on the Sky Sports F1 podcast and talked very openly about Toto's vanishing acts when it comes to contract renegotiation. We'll talk about TPC cost doing one of these parabolic settings, and as your final stanza, your main event, your main course, we'll talk about Martin Brundle U-turn and what that might mean for British bias. In the first instance, Lewis Hamilton has been talking about relationships, Turtle, Max, Issa, Jomo, Outlaw. Lewis Hamilton has been talking about his renewed commitment to winning Ferrari's first and not his 8th Drivers' Championship. This is important though, because so many people in the most recent, over the past couple of months, or years even, by dint of his material underperformance versus George Russell at Mercedes, boys and girls from Brundle and British have questioned Lewis's commitment to Formula 1. 2021 was a difficult time. Abu Dhabi settings. Is Lewis over the hill? Father time, undefeated, undisputed. If you talk about retirement, then you are already retired, some will say. Lewis Hamilton, therefore, has had his commitment questioned, but he said he doesn't have a relationship, no girlfriend, no wife, because of his commitment to Formula 1. So keen is he to breathe the rarefied air, the unprecedented air that is an 8th World Drivers' Championship. He said that all that relationship stuff can wait till after. So committed am I. I want to extract all of the juice out of my F1 career whilst I'm here. All of the relationship stuff, a girlfriend, a wife, a child, a family, that can wait till afterwards. Admirable from Sir Lewis, especially when you consider his record around the Hungaroring, and we will be there this weekend. There are only 3 drivers in F1 history who have won at the Hungaroring more than twice. One is Ayrton Senna in 88, 91 and 92. One is Schumacher in 94, 98, 2001 and 04. The other, well, he has a name, and his name is Sir Lewis Carl Davidson. Hamilton, put some respect on it. 2007, 09, 12, 13, 16, 18, 19, 20 and 2025. Maybe, who knows? Well, he's instituting for change and trying to be impactful over at Scuderia Ferrari. Many have said that he'll need to do a Michael Schumacher Regenmeister settings if he's to bring the red team with the yellow badge and the black prancing course back to the mountaintop and win silverware. It's been a while now, 18 years as near as makes the difference since they last won a Drivers' Championship with Kimi Raikkonen. Now Lewis Hamilton is having meetings with the C-suite exec level bods. First order priority is fixing the bloody car. In order to do that, he's installed a new race engineer, Luca Diella. He's worked with that person previously. It feels and looks and smells like Lewis is trying to do what Michael Schumacher did and bring all of his guys and girls, the people with whom he works closely at the boys and girls from Brundle and British, over to Scuderia Ferrari and Maranello and Fiorano. If past this prologue, that would be a recipe for success, would it not? Like Sarah's already come across, he's building him up a team of trusted counsels and F1 consiglieres. Oh, and by the way, Audi are doing one of these, are they not? Parabolic settings all of a sudden, because Jonathan Wheatley, ex-sporting director of Oracle Red Bull Racing, is now over there. A greater F1 mind than him you will not find. Lest we forget, Suzuka a couple of years ago, a curtailed Suzuka Grand Prix, he was instructing the FIA that they could award Maximilian Verstappen full set of 25 points. He has that photographic memory and a god tier racing mind. All of a sudden now it feels like Audi are doing one of these. We spoke before that some of the sponsors who were rubber stamping the F1 endeavour, that they've now left Sauber, Audi, and potentially that could lead to more downside as far as performance on the track. Jonathan Wheatley said, have a word, take 2 seats downside performance. We don't do that over here. That's why you see Hülkenberg making podium. And that's why some say you now see that there's a title sponsor, Revolut, are set to contribute to Audi's coffers tens of millions. Revolut, a financial services company, but one at the forefront of technological development. And I think that's noteworthy, since that's what Sauber are looking to do. Oh, and by the way, there is news about TPC. This is where they test prior year's cars. Autosport have run an article where they say there's been agreement on TPC testing in F1, but power units, owing to the fact that they're brand new in 26, 50% internal combustion, 50% electric, are going to cost double going forward. We understand this per the Autosport article that testing will be significantly more expensive, although that shouldn't be a problem for most teams involved since it sits outside of the cost cap R&D settings. As TPC running falls outside the budget cap, additional spending won't come at the expense of teams' development, but yeah, and still it will be expensive. Riddle me this, chat. How are the FIA talking all this gubbins, this SH1T about sustainability, and yet the engine, the power unit going forward from 2026, the active aero is set to double? How does this even make sense? You've got Cadillac F1 set to sink into R&D as far as the 2026 power unit, anywhere up to 100 million a year for a power unit that they're only going to run 2 years. They will be borrowing Ferraris up until 2028, and then in 2028 and 29 they will run. In 2030, the engine, the power unit regs change again. What are we doing here? It makes no sense. And again, the mandate, the strategic objectives of the FIA is the regulatory body of the one that F's orthogonal each and every single time to what they're doing in real time. It makes no sense. Oh, and by the way, Nico Rosberg has gone on the Sky Sports F1 podcast and he's talked about Toto, the boy who cries wolf, skullduggerous way when it comes to negotiating. He doesn't mess around. You only need to speak to George Russell about his 1+1 contract that they offered him. How very dare they put some respect on George Russell's name. Nico Rosberg says that's nothing new. That when he was negotiating a new contract, that Toto would perform a vanishing act. Skullduggerous settings. Ross Brawn in his book said something similar, that Toto has it in him to be duplicitous at the altar of furthering his business agenda. Techier than techie things. That notwithstanding, George is set to get a multi-year offer over the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned. We'll break it as soon as it comes out. Oh, and by the way, Nico Rosberg has also talked about a change in the countenance and demeanour of Oracle Red Bull Racing as far as empathy towards the drivers. If this was Christian Horner's time, you would have heard him talking about Tsunoda-san in a way that was not too empathetic, that he needs to be quicker. We'd run one car only if we could. The only reason why we run 2 is to conform and not impinge upon the regulations. That was Christian Horner's way of ruling and managing. Now, however, it's Laurent Mekies' era, and he's been supportive. Nico Rosberg, in attendance at the Belgian Grand Prix, says that he saw a change, a distinct change in the demeanour of Tsunoda-san now that he's got Laurent Mekies and his support. Lauren will be acutely aware of the talents of Tsunoda-san, having witnessed them firsthand at Racing Bulls, and he will get his arm, some say, around Tsunoda-san. It will be all about stick more than carrot. Nico Rosberg said he saw a change in Tsunoda's demeanour, and so too the way that he interacted with the new team principal of Red Bull Racing is very different from the way that Tsunoda-san would interact and communicate with Christian Horner. It feels like we're in the empathy F1 era then. So too, if we're talking about empathy, it feels a lot like that over at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, that Mercedes are doing exactly what they need to do as far as Kimi Antonelli circling the wagons around his mental well-being. It's not his fault, they say. Yeah, he was brilliant earlier on. The fact that he's been retiring and DNFing so much and struggling over the past couple of races has nothing to do with his talents behind the wheel of an F1 car. It's us. It's the W16, it's techie, it's temperamental, it's mercurial to drive. It only operates one of 365 days a year in a full moon. That type of temperamental and mercurial, ergo taking the pressure off the back of Kimi Antonelli. Autosport write an article around rookies and going into this doom loop of expectation and pressure that it always happens. We spoke about the scheduling. 12 of the last 17 weekends have been race weekends. Kimi Antonelli, bless him, is only 18. He's just passed his final exams, for Pete's sake. That's a juxtaposition if ever I've seen one. How do you expect him, therefore, to manage it? It is always going to be techier than techie things for the one they call Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Oh, and by the way, is where it gets super techie. Buckle in. Brundle's performed a little bit of a U-turn, lest we forget, around Christian Horner's dismissal. Brundle said words to this effect, and I paraphrase, that Team Verstappen were instrumental in the dismissal of Christian Horner, that they'd been pushing for it by dint of Jos Verstappen's beef with Christian Horner. They would have been ticking the boxes. Now, however, Martin Brundle said something different. And again, we have this conversation under the umbrella heading of British bias. Put a pin in that for now. We'll come back to it. Here's what Brundle said now. He said that they rubber-stamped Christian Horner's dismissal. Not that they were instrumental in it. They didn't cause it. But there would have been conversations with Charlie Mavigia, Oliver Mintzlaff et al., Mark Mateschitz too, Red Bull GmbH, Austria, Salzburg, and during those conversations, Max Verstappen, Team Verstappen, Raymond Vermeulen, Nostradamus Verstappen, they would have had to rub stamp Christian Horner's dismissal. And that's a very different tact to say that Team Verstappen were fully on board, that they were down with Christian Horner's dismissal, is something very different from them impacting it, instituting for it, causing it in effect. Remember I said British bias? Got to be precise with your language. If you're a pundit, a colour commentator on the internationally syndicated Sky Sports F1 podcast, if last week it was Team Verstappen caused Christian Horner's dismissal, and 7 days later it's now they were down with it, they rubber stamped it. Those two things are very different, not quite orthogonal, not quite diametrically opposed. They are similar but not the same. You can forgive Max Verstappen fans, therefore, for looking at these two things, which are different 7 days apart. Understands that Martin Brundle might have got new information, but Max Verstappen fans around the world who are already thinking about British bias have already witnessed the Belgian Grand Prix call, which many are saying was the worst as far as British bias. You can forgive them for calling British bias again. Blame Team Verstappen for Christian Horner's dismissal, where it was nothing of the sort. This is a misnomer. This was slander. This was skullduggery as far as its characterisation, that Team Verstappen didn't cause it, they only rubber stamped it. It was Charlie Mavigia, it was Oliver Mintzlaff, and it was Mark Mateschitz who would run out of patience with Christian Horner. Helmut Marko told us yesterday that it was all at the altar of underperformance. If Christian Horner had been managing the team, silverware had been coming into Oracle Red Bull Racing, we wouldn't be having this conversation about Christian Horner. So for Martin Brundle to say that Team Verstappen caused it is him leveraging low-hanging, lazy journalistic tropes, unacceptable, not quite British bias, but definitely not integrity as far as journalistic reporting. But Brundle wouldn't consider himself a journalist. He'd consider himself a pundit, wouldn't he? A colour commentator. And therein lies the issue, some will say. Techier than techie things as far as the weird and wacky world that is F1. Oh, the humanity.